Sophia never expected her quiet life to be turned upside down by a single puppy. When she finds the small dog scratching at the door of a local antique shop, little does she know that this chance encounter will lead her on a thrilling adventure that unearths long-hidden family secrets, dangerous treasures, and a legacy she never imagined. As she uncovers more clues, Sophia must decide what to do with the ancient knowledge she's uncovered and how far she's willing to go to protect it. The line between ally and enemy blurs, and with each twist, Sophia must face the truth about her family's past, the power of the treasure, and the sacrifices that may be necessary to keep it from falling into the wrong hands. Sophia was walking down a quiet street in the city, enjoying the cool breeze of the late afternoon. It had been a busy day, and a simple walk seemed like the best way to unwind. As she passed by a row of shops, something caught her eye, a small puppy scratching at the door of a quaint old shop. The puppy was scruffy, with big, curious eyes and a coat that looked like it hadn't been washed in a while. It seemed to be trying to get someone's attention. Sophia stopped, intrigued by the little dog's persistence. She stepped closer, crouching down to get a better look. The puppy's tail wagged furiously as it noticed her, its ears perked up. It gave a soft bark, then resumed scratching at the door. Curious, Sophia knocked lightly on the door. After a brief moment, an elderly man opened it. He had silver hair, and his glasses rested low on his nose. "Can I help you, miss?" the shopkeeper asked, his voice a little gruff but kind. Sophia looked at him and then at the puppy. "Is this your dog?" He smiled, shaking his head. "No, it comes around every day. I'm not sure where it comes from, but it always ends up here." The puppy trotted inside as if it owned the place, wagging its tail in a friendly way. Sophia couldn't help but feel a little drawn to the dog, and without thinking much, she followed it into the shop. The shop was small and packed with items, old furniture, books, paintings, and all sorts of knickknacks. Everything seemed dusty, but in a way that made the place feel like a treasure trove of history. Sophia looked around, intrigued. There was something about this shop that felt different, almost like stepping into another time. "You have a lot of interesting things here," Sophia said, turning to the shopkeeper. He nodded, looking around the room as if to remember a time when things were more organized. "Been here for years. My family's run this shop for generations." The puppy had settled on a chair in the corner, curling up like it had lived there for years too. It looked at Sophia, then back at the shopkeeper, as though it was keeping an eye on both of them. Sophia chuckled. "It's like the dog owns the place, huh?" The shopkeeper smiled, but there was something behind his eyes, something that made Sophia pause. As Sophia walked deeper into the shop, something caught her attention. A wooden box behind the counter, half hidden behind a stack of books. It had strange markings on it, symbols that seemed oddly familiar. The puppy, still in the corner, suddenly stood up and walked toward the box, sniffing it carefully. Without a word, the shopkeeper noticed where Sophia was looking. "That old thing," he said, his tone suddenly colder. "It's just a family heirloom, nothing special about it." Sophia raised an eyebrow, not quite believing him. "Are you sure? It looks like it has a story behind it." The shopkeeper hesitated, his eyes lingering on the box. "Maybe, but it's not for sale." The puppy, still watching Sophia, moved closer to the box and scratched at it again. "Do you mind if I take a closer look?" Sophia asked, curious. The shopkeeper sighed but nodded. "Go ahead, just don't open it." Sophia leaned over the counter, her fingers brushing lightly against the box. As she did, she felt a slight vibration, like something inside was waiting. The puppy suddenly barked, drawing Sophia's attention back to it. It was standing now, staring directly at her, as if urging her to keep going. Sophia, feeling a strange pull, moved toward the box, examining it more closely. There were more symbols now, one she hadn't seen before, etched so faintly that they seemed to shimmer in the dim light. She placed her hand on the lid of the box, feeling a sudden warmth emanate from it. The shopkeeper watched, his face tense, but he didn't stop her this time. Before Sophia could open it, the puppy barked again, louder this time. It ran over and pawed at her, stopping her hand just as it touched the lid. "That's enough," the shopkeeper said firmly, his voice a little too sharp. Sophia looked at him, puzzled. "What's inside?" The shopkeeper didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked over to the box and gently pulled it away from the counter. "I told you, miss, it's not for you," he said, his voice softer now. The puppy didn't stop barking, now circling around the shopkeeper and pawing at the floor. It was clear it wanted something more, and Sophia felt the same strange sense of urgency. Maybe I'm meant to see what's inside," Sophia said, half to herself. The shopkeeper looked at her, his expression unreadable. Then, with a long sigh, he slowly pulled the box open. Inside, instead of treasure or trinkets, there was a rolled-up map and a small key, both old and worn. "Is this what I think it is?" Sophia asked, feeling the weight of the moment. The shopkeeper met her gaze, a mix of caution and something else in his eyes. Regret, maybe. It's not what you think, miss, but it's time you knew. Sophia's heart raced. The map seemed to lead somewhere familiar, but it wasn't just any map. It had strange symbols marked in red ink, symbols that felt eerily connected to the puppy. Why do I feel like I'm part of something much bigger than I realized? Sophia murmured. The shopkeeper stood silently, his eyes following the puppy as it sat back down, now calm, as if everything had fallen into place. This has been my family's secret for years, the shopkeeper said, his voice steady but filled with an old, hidden grief. But now it seems like it's your turn to follow the path. Sophia looked at the map, the key, and then the puppy. She knew her life was about to change. She wasn't sure what the next steps were, but she felt a strong pull toward uncovering the mystery. And with the puppy by her side, she was ready to take the first step. Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that something important had just started. She stood in the small, dimly lit antique shop, staring at the map and the key that the shopkeeper had revealed. The puppy, who had been the silent guide leading her to this point, lay quietly by her feet now, its bright eyes glistening in the low light. "Tell me about the map," Sophia said, turning to the shopkeeper. His face was more somber now, as if he had just made a decision he couldn't take back. He looked down at the map, his fingers brushing the edges of it with a tenderness that suggested it was more than just a piece of paper to him. "It's been in my family for generations," he began slowly. "This map, along with the key, leads to something very old, something that's been kept secret for a reason." Sophia frowned, her curiosity piqued. "A treasure?" she asked, though she wasn't entirely sure she believed in the typical treasure hunt stories. The shopkeeper shook his head, his gaze distant. "Not a treasure in the way you think. It's a legacy, a story that should have remained hidden. My family was tasked with guarding it, but now it's yours to follow." Sophia felt the weight of his words sink in. She glanced down at the puppy, who was now standing, its tail twitching with purpose. It gave her a knowing look, almost as if it understood everything that was unfolding. The puppy then padded over to the door, looking back at her, waiting. "Are you telling me that the puppy knows where this leads?" Sophia asked, confused but strangely trusting. The shopkeeper smiled faintly, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "It always has. The dog's family has been involved in protecting the map's secrets for as long as mine. It's been guiding the way, and now it's guiding you." Sophia stood frozen for a moment. The weight of what he was saying was almost too much to take in. This puppy, this little creature who seemed so ordinary, was somehow part of something much bigger than herself. It was as if fate had pushed her into a role she didn't fully understand. I need some time to think about this," Sophia said, running a hand through her hair. The map and key were a lot to take in, and the idea of her life turning into a treasure hunt was far-fetched even for her. But before she could say anything more, the puppy barked, an eager, sharp sound. It turned and headed toward the door again, looking back at Sophia as if saying, "You've got to follow me now." The shopkeeper's eyes softened as he saw the puppy's reaction. "It's not something you can ignore once you're involved. It will keep pushing you, leading you to answers, and to something far more important than just the treasure itself." With a deep breath, Sophia made her decision. She wasn't sure where this path would lead, but something inside her told her she couldn't turn back now. "I'll follow," she said, more to herself than to anyone else. She grabbed her jacket and headed for the door. The puppy, tail wagging, immediately darted outside, eager to continue its mission. Outside the shop, the city's bustle felt far away. The puppy, moving quickly with purpose, led Sophia down narrow streets and alleys she had never noticed before. It was as if the city had shifted around her, revealing hidden paths only the puppy knew. The puppy stopped at a small, unmarked door on the side of a building. It scratched at the wood and looked up at Sophia with a determined gaze. "What is it?" Sophia whispered, crouching down to inspect the door. There was no sign or indication of what lay beyond, just a door like any other. Without a word, the puppy nudged a small button on the doorframe, causing a latch to release with a soft click. The door creaked open slightly, revealing a narrow staircase that led down into darkness. Sophia hesitated for a moment, her pulse quickening. This was too strange, too risky, but the pull of the unknown was stronger than her doubt. She looked down at the puppy. "You want me to go in?" she asked softly. The puppy barked once, wagging its tail. With a sigh, Sophia stepped forward, pushing the door open fully. The staircase led down into a dimly lit room. The air was thick with dust, and the walls were lined with old, worn bookshelves. Strange objects and artifacts filled the shelves, some old, some newer, but all covered with a thick layer of dust. The room smelled faintly of age and mystery. At the center of the room was an ancient chest, covered in intricate carvings. It seemed out of place in such a forgotten corner, yet it felt as though it had been waiting here for centuries. The puppy walked over to the chest and pawed at it, its eyes locked onto Sophia, urging her to open it. Without a word, Sophia bent down and touched the chest. As her fingers made contact with the lid, she felt a shiver run down her spine. It was as though the chest was alive, as though it recognized her touch. Slowly, she lifted the lid. Inside there were papers, old letters, journals, and a thick envelope sealed with wax. She took the envelope out carefully, her hands trembling slightly as she broke the seal. Inside the envelope was a letter written in elegant handwriting. Sophia unfolded it, reading the words carefully. To whoever finds this, you hold the key to our family's legacy. What lies hidden here is not just treasure, it's history, and it must never fall into the wrong hands. If you are reading this, know that you have been chosen for a purpose far greater than what you can yet understand. The dog, your guide, will lead you to the next step. Trust in it, as it has trusted those before you. Sophia stared at the letter, stunned. The words felt like a heavy weight in her hands. She had stumbled into something much larger than she could have imagined. As Sophia looked up, the puppy sat in front of her, watching intently. Its gaze was steady, as if it had always known this moment would come. Sophia swallowed hard, the weight of the discovery settling over her. "What now?" she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. The puppy barked once, then turned toward the door, urging her to follow. Sophia nodded. There was no turning back now. She had just begun this strange journey, and with the puppy leading the way, she had no idea where it would take her, but she was ready to find out. Sophia followed the puppy, stepping back into the cold night air of the city. The weight of the letter from the chest pressed down on her like a secret too heavy to carry. With the puppy leading the way, she felt like she was walking in a fog, unsure of what was happening, yet somehow compelled to keep going. The puppy didn't slow down. It trotted ahead with purpose, stopping only briefly at street corners before pushing onward. Sophia, despite her unease, couldn't help but follow. "What's going on, little guy?" she whispered, crouching down to the puppy's level. "Where are you taking me?" The puppy barked once and then turned its head back to her, as if encouraging her to hurry. Sophia chuckled, trying to steady her nerves. She had no idea what she was getting herself into, but the dog seemed certain. As they passed through the bustling city streets, Sophia felt an odd sense of being watched. She glanced around but saw nothing out of the ordinary. It wasn't until they turned down a quieter alley that she noticed someone following them. A figure, cloaked in shadows, seemed to be trailing at a distance. Sophia's heart skipped a beat. Her instinct was to speed up, but she didn't want to alert the stranger that she knew they were being followed. She kept walking, but now every sound seemed louder: the tap of her shoes against the pavement, the rustle of leaves in the wind. The puppy, seemingly aware of her unease, stayed close, its eyes scanning the area as if it too could sense danger. "Stay close," Sophia muttered, picking up her pace. The figure in the shadows moved quicker, keeping up with them, but still staying just out of sight. Sophia's pulse quickened. Who were they, and why were they following her? As they reached a quieter part of the alley, Sophia turned sharply and confronted the stranger. She stepped into the shadows, blocking the path. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice firm. The figure froze, clearly caught off guard. Slowly they stepped forward into the dim light. Sophia was startled to see that it wasn't someone threatening or sinister. It was a young woman, probably in her early 30s, with short hair and dark sunglasses. She seemed more curious than dangerous. "I didn't mean to scare you," the woman said, her voice calm. "I'm just keeping an eye on the puppy." Sophia blinked, confused. "The puppy?" The woman nodded, her eyes flicking to the dog. "I've been watching it for a while now. It's part of something bigger, and I thought you should know." "Why are you following me?" Sophia asked, her suspicion rising. The woman hesitated, clearly weighing her options. Finally, she spoke. "Because I know what you found. The key, the map, the chest, it's all connected. And you're not the only one looking for it." Sophia's heart raced. "What do you mean?" The woman sighed, pushing her sunglasses up onto her head, revealing tired eyes. "You're not the first person to be drawn into this. Your family's legacy is far more complicated than you realize. The puppy, it's been guiding people like you for generations, but there are others who are after what you found. Dangerous people." Sophia shook her head, trying to piece it all together. "You're saying my family's involved in all of this?" "Yes," the woman replied, "and it's why I'm here. To warn you, you need to stop before it's too late." Sophia looked down at the puppy, who was sitting calmly by her feet. Its presence felt reassuring, but the woman's words echoed in her mind. Dangerous people. She didn't know who to trust anymore. "Why should I listen to you?" Sophia asked. "How do I know you're not just another person trying to get the treasure for yourself?" The woman's eyes softened. "Because I'm not after the treasure. I'm after the truth. I've been chasing it for years, trying to stop the people who want to exploit it. Your family, they were involved in something dark, and it's time to uncover it. before someone else does. Sophia felt the weight of the situation sinking in. She had known from the beginning that this wouldn't be easy, but she hadn't realized just how deep it went. The puppy, who had been sitting quietly, suddenly stood up and barked, looking directly at the woman. It wagged its tail and started moving toward her, then turned back to Sophia as if urging her to listen. "Wait," Sophia said, looking at the dog. "You know her?" The puppy barked again, walking over to the woman and sitting at her feet. The woman knelt down, scratching behind the puppy's ears. "It trusts me. I've been following its trail for a while." Sophia's mind raced. Could she trust the stranger? Was this woman genuinely trying to help, or was she just another part of the puzzle? The woman stood up. "I'm not asking you to trust me completely, but if you want to get to the bottom of this, you're going to need help. You've already uncovered part of the story, but there's much more you haven't seen, and there are people who will stop at nothing to get it before you do." Sophia looked at the puppy, then back at the woman. Something in her gut told her this wasn't just a coincidence. This was the next step. "I'll listen," Sophia said finally. "But I'm not doing this alone." The woman nodded, a slight smile on her face. "Good. You'll need me, and I'll need you." Sophia felt a shift in the air as the weight of her decision settled over her. She had just stepped into something much bigger than she could have imagined. But with the puppy by her side and this mysterious woman offering help, she knew there was no turning back. The woman led Sophia and the puppy down the street, outlining a plan to get the next clue. She warned that time was running out. The people who were after the treasure were close. As they walked, Sophia couldn't help but feel the urgency in the air, like the entire world had shifted, and she was now in the middle of a race against time. What she didn't know was that the true journey had only just begun. Sophia felt the weight of everything pressing on her as the mysterious woman led the way down the dimly lit streets. The puppy, now at her heels, kept looking back at her, as if reminding her that there was no turning back. She felt a mix of curiosity, fear, and determination. Her life had just been turned upside down, and now she was walking alongside a stranger into the unknown, with only the puppy as her guide. "You said there are others after the treasure," Sophia said, trying to process everything. "Who are they?" The woman glanced over her shoulder at Sophia. "People who will stop at nothing to exploit what your family has hidden. They want more than treasure. They want control. The treasure isn't just gold or jewels. It's knowledge, a key to power." Sophia frowned. Power? What kind of power could be hidden in an old family treasure? The woman didn't answer immediately. She just kept walking, her pace steady. After a few moments, she stopped in front of a small, unmarked door tucked between two buildings. She turned to Sophia. "This is where we need to be," she said quietly. "Inside, there's a safe house where we can regroup and plan our next move." The door creaked open, and they stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, with only a few lamps casting soft light on the walls. Shelves filled with books, maps, and old documents lined the walls. The air smelled faintly of old paper and dust, but there was a sense of safety here, a stark contrast to the uncertainty Sophia had felt earlier. The woman closed the door behind them, making sure it was locked tightly. "We'll need to move quickly. The people I've been tracking are closing in on us. They're getting closer to the treasure, and we can't afford to waste time." Sophia took a deep breath. "So what now? Where do we go from here?" The woman nodded to a large table in the center of the room, where a map was spread out. The puppy immediately ran over to the table and pawed at it, drawing Sophia's attention. The woman pointed to a spot on the map. "This is where we're headed next. It's an old mansion, your family's estate. There are clues there, clues that will lead us to the next part of the puzzle." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. My family's estate. I didn't even know it was still standing. The woman gave her a look that suggested she didn't know much about her family's past. "You'll find more answers there, Sophia. The mansion has been abandoned for years, but it's where the key to everything lies." As Sophia studied the map, she felt the weight of the mystery grow even heavier. The mansion seemed so far removed from the ordinary life she had known. She had no idea what kind of family legacy she was tied to, but now she knew it was much more complicated than anything she had imagined. Suddenly, the woman spoke again, her tone more serious than before. "There's something I should tell you about your family," she said, pausing for a moment. "Your ancestor, the one who hid the treasure, wasn't just a protector. He was a key player in a secret network that spanned generations. This network was meant to keep the knowledge safe, but it was also meant to keep others from finding it." Sophia looked at her in confusion. "You're telling me my family was involved in something criminal?" The woman nodded slowly. "Not criminal. Secretive, yes. Dangerous, maybe. But it was all about control. They kept things hidden, and they kept the power to themselves. But the treasure isn't just about that power anymore. It's about breaking the cycle. It's time for someone to bring the truth to light." The more Sophia heard, the more overwhelmed she became. Her family was involved in something ancient, something dark, and now she was at the center of it. But instead of fear, there was a strange sense of purpose settling in her chest. She didn't know how or why, but she was beginning to believe that she had been led here for a reason. "We can't waste any more time," the woman said, snapping Sophia out of her thoughts. "The longer we wait, the closer they get, and trust me, they won't stop. We have to go to the mansion before anyone else does." Sophia glanced down at the puppy, who was sitting beside her, looking up at her expectantly. The puppy's calm, steady gaze made her feel like she was making the right decision. It was as if the dog knew something she didn't, something that only time would reveal. Without saying another word, Sophia nodded. "Let's go." The woman smiled, relieved. "Good, we leave now. The mansion is just a short drive away. We'll need to be quick, but we'll make it." As they gathered their things and prepared to leave the safe house, Sophia felt a mixture of fear and excitement. She wasn't just uncovering the past, she was becoming part of it. And whatever lay ahead, she knew she couldn't do it alone. The puppy stood up, wagging its tail, and led the way toward the door, signaling that it was time. Sophia followed, her mind racing with questions, but one thing was clear, she was ready for whatever came next. As they stepped back out into the night, Sophia could feel the storm coming. She didn't know what awaited her at the mansion, but she was about to find out. Sophia's heart raced as they pulled up to the old mansion, its silhouette dark against the night sky. The driveway, once grand and welcoming, was now overgrown with weeds and crumbling stones. The windows were boarded up, casting the place in a gloomy, ominous light. It looked abandoned, but Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that it was still very much alive with secrets. The puppy barked once, its tail wagging as it jumped out of the car, clearly excited. The woman, still silent, stepped out next, moving toward the mansion with purpose. Sophia hesitated for a moment, the weight of everything pressing on her chest. She had come this far, but now that she was here, something felt different. This place was tied to everything, the treasure, her family's past, and the mysterious forces chasing after it. "Ready?" the woman asked, looking back at Sophia. Taking a deep breath, Sophia nodded. "Let's do this." The front door creaked loudly as they pushed it open, revealing a dark hallway. Dust swirled in the air, and the smell of decay was overwhelming. The puppy bolted inside, its small paws clicking against the wooden floor, leading the way with a sense of urgency. Sophia followed, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. "This place is huge," Sophia muttered. The mansion stretched in every direction, with hallways that seemed to go on forever. She couldn't help but feel a little lost, but the puppy's tail kept her focused. The woman paused. "The treasure isn't far. It's hidden deep within the house. But we need to be careful. There are traps." "Traps?" Sophia echoed, her voice tightening with apprehension. The woman nodded grimly. "Not all the family's secrets were meant to be found. Some parts of this place are meant to keep people out." Sophia shuddered at the thought of hidden dangers, but she couldn't back out now. She followed the woman and the puppy as they moved deeper into the mansion. As they entered a large study, the puppy suddenly stopped, sniffing the air and then running toward a bookcase. It pawed at the bottom shelf, its excitement growing. Sophia felt a surge of anticipation. She stepped forward, pushing aside the pile of dust on the floor and bending down to examine the area. "What's this?" she asked, her hand brushing against a loose book on the shelf. The woman stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "It's one of the hidden mechanisms. The books are designed to keep secrets. Pull the right one, and it opens a way forward." Sophia hesitated, but with the puppy still circling around her excitedly, she took a deep breath and pulled the book. The shelf in front of her creaked and then slowly swung open, revealing a dark passage beyond. "Here we go," the woman said, a hint of approval in her voice. "Follow me." The passage was narrow, the walls lined with old portraits of people Sophia didn't recognize. As they moved deeper, the air grew cooler and the sense of unease intensified. The puppy led the way, stopping at the end of the hall where another door stood, this one much larger and heavier than the others. The woman stepped forward. "This is it. This is where the treasure has been kept." Sophia's heart pounded as the woman pushed open the door, but as soon as they stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind them with a loud bang, and the room was plunged into near darkness. The puppy barked once, its voice echoing off the stone walls. "What's happening?" Sophia asked, panic rising in her chest. "It's a pressure mechanism," the woman said, her voice calm but urgent. "This room locks itself until the puzzle is solved. We need to find the key to unlock it." Sophia quickly scanned the room, noting that the walls were covered in strange symbols. They seemed to pulse faintly, as if they were alive, waiting for something. "This is insane," Sophia muttered under her breath. She knew she had to think quickly, but everything around her felt so overwhelming. The puppy barked again, running to a wall where one symbol seemed different from the others. It was slightly raised, like a button that could be pushed. "That's it," the woman said, rushing toward the wall. "Press it." Sophia hesitated for only a moment before following the woman's lead. She pressed the symbol, and with a loud click, the heavy door creaked open again, allowing them to escape the room. Just as they stepped into the next part of the mansion, the puppy suddenly stopped and growled softly. Its ears flattened as it looked toward the far corner of the room. Sophia turned, her instincts kicking in. Someone was there. A tall figure emerged from the shadows. It was the man who had been following them earlier, the one who had warned Sophia to stop. He was now standing in front of them, blocking their path. "You really think you can uncover all of this?" he asked, his voice low and cold. "You don't know what you're dealing with." Sophia stepped back, holding her ground. "Who are you?" "I'm here to make sure the treasure stays hidden," the man replied. "You don't understand the consequences of what you're about to do." The woman took a step forward, standing between Sophia and the man. "You won't stop us. We're getting to the truth." The man's eyes narrowed, and he took a step back. "Then you're making a huge mistake. The treasure is dangerous." The man's words hung in the air, but Sophia had already made up her mind. The truth had been hidden for far too long. She was determined to find it, no matter the cost. "Let's move," Sophia said to the woman, her voice firm. The woman nodded, and the puppy, now growling softly, led the way once more. As they walked through the mansion, they could feel the weight of time pressing down on them. Every step brought them closer to the heart of the mystery, but with the man still lurking behind, it was clear that they were running out of time. There were forces at play here that didn't want them to uncover the truth, and Sophia could feel the danger closing in. But she couldn't turn back now, not when she was this close. Sophia's heart raced as she, the woman, and the puppy navigated deeper into the mansion. Every step they took seemed to pull them closer to the heart of a mystery that had been hidden for generations. The man's warning still echoed in her mind, but she couldn't let fear control her now. She was so close to the answers. As they moved through the dimly lit corridors, the puppy stopped at a door that was unlike the others they'd encountered. It was made of heavy oak, with intricate carvings that matched the symbols from the map. The puppy barked once, then sat down in front of it, looking up at Sophia as if waiting for her to make the next move. "This is it," the woman said, her voice low. "The final room." Sophia felt a chill run down her spine as she reached for the door handle. The weight of her family's legacy pressed heavily on her shoulders. She didn't know what was waiting behind this door, but she knew it was the key to everything. The door creaked open, revealing a large, circular room. The walls were lined with shelves, each holding different objects, old scrolls, mysterious relics, and more maps. But at the center of the room was what caught Sophia's attention. A large stone pedestal with an ancient-looking book resting on top. The book had a lock on it, but unlike any lock she had ever seen before, it was shaped like the key she had found earlier. "The book is the final piece," the woman explained, walking over to the pedestal. "The treasure isn't just about gold, it's about knowledge. This book contains everything. The history of your family, the secrets they kept, and the true purpose of the treasure." Sophia's pulse quickened as she moved closer to the pedestal. She had always thought the treasure would be something physical, coins, jewels, but this was something different. This was knowledge, something much more dangerous and valuable than any material wealth. "Are you ready for this?" the woman asked, her eyes narrowing. Sophia hesitated, her fingers hovering over the book. "I don't know, but I have to be." She took a deep breath, grabbed the key, and placed it in the lock. With a soft click, the lock turned and the book opened. The pages were yellowed and delicate, but the words were still legible. As Sophia flipped through the pages, she was stunned by what she saw. The book contained detailed accounts of her family's history, but it was not the kind of history she had been taught. Her ancestors had not just been protectors, they had been part of a secret organization that spanned centuries, guarding knowledge that could change the course of history. They had hidden this knowledge from the world, not because it was dangerous to the world, but because it was dangerous to those who sought power. The treasure wasn't just hidden to protect it, Sophia said softly, reading a passage aloud. It was hidden to prevent people from using it for their own gain, to keep it from falling into the wrong hands. The woman stepped closer, nodding. "Exactly. Your family has been guarding it for centuries, but now it's up to you to decide what happens next." Sophia looked at the puppy, who was sitting quietly by her feet. The dog's gaze was steady, as if it understood the weight of the decision she was about to make. The woman looked at Sophia, her expression serious. "You've uncovered the truth, but there's a problem. There are people out there, dangerous people, who will stop at nothing to take this knowledge for themselves. You have to make a choice, protect it, or risk it falling into the wrong hands." Sophia felt a knot form in her stomach. She hadn't expected the decision to be so heavy. She had come this far, but now the gravity of what she was holding in her hands became clear. This wasn't just a treasure hunt. This was a legacy, a responsibility, one that would change her life forever. What if I can't protect it? Sophia whispered, the fear in her voice betraying her. The woman's eyes softened. You don't have to do it alone, but you have to decide. The world doesn't need this kind of power, especially not in the wrong hands. Sophia closed the book, her mind racing. There was too much at stake, but she knew what she had to do. She had come too far to let it fall apart now. We protect it, Sophia said finally, her voice steady. We can't let anyone else control it. This has to stay hidden. Just as Sophia finished speaking, a loud crash echoed through the mansion. The walls trembled as if they were shaking with the weight of the decision she had just made. The puppy's ears perked up, and it growled low, its body tense. What was that? Sophia asked, her heart racing. The woman's expression hardened. They found us. Sophia's blood ran cold. She had no idea who they were, but she knew they were here, and they weren't going to stop. The puppy barked once and dashed toward the door, its eyes never leaving Sophia's. It was clear the dog knew what to do. We need to leave. Now, the woman said urgently. They're closing in. We have to protect the book. With the puppy leading the way, they rushed back through the mansion's dark hallways. The mansion that had once seemed so silent now felt alive with danger. Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow darker than the last. They reached the front door, but before they could exit, a group of masked figures appeared, blocking their path. Sophia's heart raced as they stood there, watching her every move. The puppy growled, its stance defensive, but Sophia knew they were outnumbered. What do we do now? Sophia asked, fear creeping into her voice. The woman grabbed her arm, pulling her back. We fight or we run, but either way, we can't let them take it. Sophia's heart pounded in her chest as the masked figures closed in, their presence overwhelming. The puppy stood in front of her, its teeth bared, while the woman stood protectively beside her. The heavy silence was broken only by the creaking of the old mansion and the distant hum of the city beyond. Stay close, the woman said, her voice urgent and calm, yet there was a hint of fear in her eyes. We have to move quickly. Sophia's mind raced, trying to think of an escape. The mansion was old, its exits few, and the figures blocking the way seemed intent on stopping them at all costs. Why are they after us? Sophia asked, her voice shaky. What do they want with the treasure? They want control, the woman answered, gripping Sophia's arm tightly. They want to use the knowledge in that book for their own gain, power, influence. They'll stop at nothing to get it. Sophia swallowed hard, glancing at the puppy, whose stance was now even more defensive. What now? She whispered. We fight or run, the woman said grimly, and right now, running is our best option. Before Sophia could respond, the first masked figure lunged forward, moving fast. The puppy barked fiercely, jumping toward the man with surprising agility. The woman pushed Sophia back into a nearby alcove as the puppy distracted the attacker, darting between his legs and knocking him off balance. Go, the woman yelled, pulling Sophia toward the back of the mansion. Head for the alleyway. The back door's our only chance. Sophia didn't need to be told twice. She ran, her legs carrying her as fast as they could, the sound of footsteps echoing behind her. The puppy was already at her side, its fur bristling as it kept the attackers at bay. They reached the back door, and the woman kicked it open with a force that surprised Sophia. They stumbled outside, into the alley that ran alongside the mansion. The cool night air hit her like a wave, and for a moment she felt a sense of relief. But it was short-lived. The figures were already chasing them, their movements swift and determined. Sophia's breath came in short gasps as they ran down the narrow alley, the puppy staying close to them, guiding their path. We can't outrun them forever, Sophia shouted, her voice rising in panic. We don't have to outrun them, the woman said, glancing over her shoulder. We just need to outsmart them. As they reached a dead end in the alley, Sophia's heart skipped a beat. There was nowhere left to go. The masked figures appeared at the other end of the alley, blocking their path. Sophia felt a wave of helplessness wash over her. They were trapped. Then the woman pulled out a small device from her pocket and pressed a button. There was a low rumble beneath their feet, followed by a creaking sound. Sophia turned just in time to see a section of the alley wall slide open, revealing a hidden passage. Move, the woman shouted, shoving Sophia toward the opening. Sophia didn't hesitate. She darted through the passage, followed by the woman and the puppy. The wall closed behind them, sealing them off from their pursuers. They ran through the dark passage, the air musty and stale. The walls were lined with old pipes, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed around them. Sophia could hear the footsteps of their pursuers growing distant, but she knew it wasn't over yet. Where does this lead? Sophia asked, trying to catch her breath. The woman's expression was grim. It leads to safety for now, but we can't stay here long. They'll be looking for us, and we need to move before they catch up. The puppy, still alert, sniffed the air, Its ears perked up as it led the way. Sophia followed closely, her thoughts racing. She had just escaped from danger, but the truth about her family's legacy was still ahead of her, and now it seemed like it was under threat from forces she couldn't yet fully understand. After what felt like an eternity of running through dark corridors, they finally emerged into a small underground room. It was empty except for a few crates and barrels stacked against the walls. Sophia collapsed onto one of the crates, trying to steady her breathing. "We're safe for now," the woman said, but her voice held no satisfaction, only a tense weariness. Sophia looked around, trying to process everything that had happened. "How long do we have? How do we stop them?" The woman was silent for a moment. "We can't stop them alone, but we have to stay ahead of them. The knowledge in that book is too powerful for it to fall into the wrong hands." Sophia looked at the puppy, who was sitting quietly by her feet as though waiting for the next command. The connection she felt to the dog was undeniable. It was guiding her, protecting her. It had been her silent partner through every step of this journey. "How do we stop them?" Sophia asked again, her voice more determined this time. The woman hesitated, then spoke in a low voice. "We need to find the next piece of the puzzle. There are more clues hidden, clues that will lead us to the heart of this. But it's going to get worse before it gets better. There are more people out there who want this, and they won't stop until they have it." The woman pulled out a map from her bag, unrolling it on the ground. "This is where we go next," she said, pointing to a location marked with a red X. "It's an old church on the outskirts of the city. Inside there's a hidden compartment. It holds the next key to understanding all of this." Sophia studied the map, her mind still racing. "And after that?" The woman looked up at her, her expression hardening. "After that, we confront the people who are chasing us. We take the fight to them." Sophia stood up, the weight of the decision hanging heavy on her shoulders. But as she looked down at the puppy, she knew there was no turning back now. This wasn't just about treasure anymore. This was about stopping the people who would use it for their own gain. "I'm in," Sophia said, her voice firm. "Let's go." The puppy barked, wagging its tail in approval, and led the way out of the room, ready for the next leg of the journey. The underground room felt like a brief moment of peace, but Sophia knew it wouldn't last long. The puppy's steady pace, leading them through the maze of tunnels and forgotten pathways, kept them moving forward. The woman had already packed the map and her other supplies, keeping one eye on Sophia and the other on the path ahead. Sophia felt a mix of exhaustion and determination. They had narrowly escaped their pursuers, but she knew this was only the beginning. She was beginning to understand the weight of the mission she had stepped into. This treasure, her family's legacy, was far more dangerous than she could have imagined. "We're almost there," the woman said, her voice breaking the silence. "The church is just ahead. We need to be careful. There are others who've been tracking this location for a long time." Sophia nodded, her thoughts racing. "What's so special about this church?" she asked. "Why is it the next step?" The woman's eyes darkened as she glanced at Sophia. "Inside the church is something that can end this, for good. It's the key to everything. The treasure, the power, the knowledge. If we find it, we'll be able to stop them." The small church stood at the edge of the city, tucked between overgrown trees and surrounded by an old iron gate. The building itself looked abandoned, its stone exterior crumbled with age, the windows dark and covered in ivy. It seemed like any other forgotten structure, but Sophia knew it wasn't. The puppy, once again, was the first to approach, sniffing at the air before darting toward the church door. "This place is eerie," Sophia said, looking around nervously. "Are you sure this is the right place?" The woman's expression was grim. "This is it. It's been hidden for decades. Only a few people knew of its true significance." The puppy, seemingly unfazed by the oppressive atmosphere, pushed against the church door, which creaked open with a long, drawn-out groan. They stepped inside, and Sophia immediately felt the temperature drop. The air was stale, thick with dust, and the only sound was the soft echo of their footsteps. Inside the church, the altar was covered in dust, and the pews were scattered with forgotten relics and broken pieces of furniture. The stained glass windows, once vibrant, were now cracked and dull, letting in only faint rays of light. As they moved further into the church, the puppy stopped at a section of the floor near the altar. It scratched at the ground, clearly trying to signal something. Sophia approached cautiously, her eyes scanning the area. She had a feeling this wasn't just an ordinary church. The floor seemed different here, like there was something beneath it. "There's something hidden here," the woman said, kneeling beside the puppy. "It's a secret compartment built to protect the most important part of the treasure." Sophia knelt down as well, joining the woman and the puppy in their search. After a moment, she spotted what the puppy had been digging at, a small, almost invisible seam along the stone floor. With a quick motion, she pressed down on it, and the floor creaked, slowly lifting up to reveal a dark passage leading down. "This is it," the woman said, her voice filled with a mix of excitement and caution. "We're about to uncover the final piece." Sophia hesitated for a moment, looking at the puppy. "Are you sure this is safe?" The puppy barked in response, as if assuring her they were on the right path. With a deep breath, Sophia followed the woman into the passage. The passage was narrow and winding, lit only by the faint glow of their flashlights. The air grew cooler as they descended deeper into the earth. The stone walls were lined with strange markings, symbols that seemed to pulse with an energy Sophia couldn't explain. The puppy led the way, its keen senses guiding them through the winding tunnels. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the silence became, and the more tense Sophia felt. She had no idea what they would find at the end of this journey, but she knew they couldn't stop now. Finally, they arrived at a large stone door, unlike anything they had seen before. It was covered in intricate carvings, symbols, maps, and strange writing that seemed almost alive in the dim light. The puppy stopped in front of the door and let out a low growl, almost as if warning them. "This is it," the woman said, her voice low and reverent. "The treasure is behind this door." Sophia stepped forward, her heart racing. She had come so far, and now, at the final moment, everything seemed to hinge on this one door. The puppy watched her closely, its eyes filled with an understanding that went beyond its simple instincts. "There must be a way to open it," Sophia said, scanning the door for any clues. The markings on it were unfamiliar, but there was one symbol that stood out, one that looked like a keyhole. "The key," the woman murmured, pulling the key from her pocket. It matched the symbol perfectly. "It's time to end this." With trembling hands, Sophia inserted the key into the keyhole. The door creaked, the sound echoing through the chamber as the lock clicked open. The door slowly began to swing open, revealing a room that took Sophia's breath away. Inside the room was a pedestal, and atop it rested an ancient book. The pages were yellowed and fragile, but the markings on them were unmistakable, the same symbols that had appeared on the map, on the lock, and even in the church. This was it, the final piece. The woman stepped forward, her expression a mix of awe and determination. "This is the truth. This is what we've been fighting for." Sophia took a step forward, feeling as though the weight of the world was on her shoulders. The room was filled with an electric tension, and the puppy barked once, as if urging her to take the book. As Sophia reached out to touch it, she felt a surge of energy, and the book opened on its own. The pages turned, revealing not just the secrets of her family, but the dark history of the treasure, its true purpose, and the terrible price of uncovering it. She had found the answers, but now she faced the hardest choice of all, what to do with the knowledge she had uncovered. The air in the hidden chamber was thick with the weight of centuries. Sophia stood frozen, staring at the open book on the pedestal. The symbols on its pages seemed to dance in the dim light, casting shadows that looked almost alive. It wasn't just a treasure. This book held the knowledge of generations, secrets that had been buried and protected for centuries. The puppy sat beside her, its calm presence a stark contrast to the storm of thoughts raging in her mind. The woman stepped closer, her eyes fixed on the book, her face a mixture of awe and trepidation. "Do you understand what this means?" the woman asked, her voice low. Sophia glanced up at her, the weight of the question settling in her chest. "I think so. This book isn't just about treasure. It's knowledge. The kind of knowledge that can change everything." The woman nodded, her expression grim. "Exactly. This book holds the key to more than just your family's past. It holds the power to change the future. If it falls into the wrong hands, it could destroy everything. That's why it's been hidden all these years." Sophia swallowed hard, her fingers hovering over the pages. "And you think we're the ones who should decide what happens to it?" "Not just us," the woman said, her gaze meeting Sophia's. "We can't be the only ones who know. The right people need to see this, but we have to be careful. There are others, dangerous people, who will stop at nothing to get their hands on this." The room seemed to grow colder as the woman's words sank in. Sophia's mind raced. She had uncovered the truth, but now she was faced with a question that had no easy answer. What should she do with the knowledge in this book? "How do we keep it safe?" Sophia asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "How do we make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands?" The woman's face hardened. "We need to destroy it." The words hit Sophia like a punch to the gut. "Destroy it?" she repeated, her voice almost a whisper. "Yes," the woman said firmly. "The knowledge is too powerful to be left for anyone to use. If it's destroyed, there will be no chance for anyone to misuse it." Sophia turned her gaze back to the book, her fingers lightly brushing over the pages. It felt wrong, destroying something so ancient, so full of history. But could she really allow this kind of power to exist, knowing what could happen if it fell into the wrong hands? Before she could respond, the puppy stood up and barked once, its tail wagging furiously. It ran to the door, then turned back to look at Sophia, as if urging her to follow. "Do you think the puppy wants us to go?" Sophia asked, looking at the woman. The woman's expression softened for a moment. "It's not just about what we want. We have to act fast. They're coming." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. Who else?" the woman said, her voice cold. "The people who've been after this treasure for years. They've finally found us. We don't have much time." Sophia's blood ran cold as the weight of their situation hit her. They weren't alone. They were being hunted. The puppy, seemingly aware of the urgency, barked again and ran to the passage they had come through. It was time to leave. "Come on," the woman said urgently, grabbing Sophia's arm. "We need to move now." Sophia nodded, the book still heavy in her hands. She hesitated for only a moment before placing it back on the pedestal. This wasn't the time to make a decision. Not yet. They needed to get out first. They rushed out of the chamber, the puppy leading the way. The passage they had come through seemed longer now, the walls pressing in as if the mansion itself was closing around them. Sophia's footsteps echoed in the narrow corridor, her pulse quickening with each step. As they reached the main hall of the mansion, the sound of footsteps echoed behind them. Someone was coming. They had to hurry. The woman glanced over her shoulder, her eyes sharp with urgency. "We need to get to the car. They'll be waiting at the exit. If we don't get out now, we're trapped." Sophia nodded, her heart pounding. The puppy barked once more, as if urging them on. They moved faster, sprinting through the hallways, their footsteps a blur. The mansion felt like a maze now, each turn more confusing than the last. They finally reached the front door, but as Sophia swung it open, she froze. Standing at the entrance were two figures, masked and armed, blocking their way. "Stay where you are," one of them commanded, his voice muffled by the mask. "You don't know what you're dealing with." Sophia's stomach tightened. She looked to the woman for guidance, but the woman's eyes were locked on the figures, calculating her next move. "Move aside," the woman said, her voice cold. "We're leaving, and you're not stopping us." The masked figures didn't budge. Instead, one of them pulled out a gun, pointing it directly at Sophia. "Not so fast," the figure said, his voice dripping with menace. The puppy growled, stepping forward, its body tense. It seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, but Sophia knew they couldn't fight their way out of this, not without risking everything. Sophia felt a surge of adrenaline. She wasn't going to let these people control her life. She wasn't going to let them take what wasn't theirs. Before anyone could react, Sophia bolted forward, shoving past the figures and running for the alley outside. The puppy barked once, running alongside her as the woman followed closely behind. The sound of gunshots rang out, but they were already moving, weaving through the alleyways, using the dark streets to their advantage. The woman, despite the chaos, led them with precision, taking sharp turns and ducking through hidden corners to lose their pursuers. They finally made it to the car, and the woman quickly started the engine. As they drove away from the mansion, Sophia glanced over her shoulder, her breath still ragged. The mansion was already fading into the distance, but the danger wasn't over. They had escaped, but only for now. Underscore 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 underscore. The road ahead. Sophia looked down at the puppy, who had calmed down but was still alert. It seemed to know the road ahead was uncertain. The woman kept her eyes on the road, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. "What now?" Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman didn't answer right away, her focus solely on the road ahead. Finally, she spoke, her voice serious. "We find out who's behind all of this. We uncover the rest of the truth, and we stop them." Sophia nodded, the weight of her decision settling in. This was just the beginning. There were more secrets to uncover, more enemies to face. And no matter how hard the road ahead might be, she knew one thing for sure: she couldn't stop now. With the puppy at her side and the woman driving them toward their next destination, Sophia felt more determined than ever. The truth would come out, and no one would be able to stop them. The car sped through the dark streets, the headlights casting long shadows across the empty roads. Sophia's mind was still spinning from the narrow escape. They had barely made it out of the mansion, but the danger wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The woman, her grip tight on the steering wheel, didn't say a word as they raced through the city. Sophia tried to steady her breath, but her heart still hammered in her chest. The adrenaline from the chase had barely worn off, and the weight of the book in the back seat made her feel both powerful and terrified. Who were those people? Sophia finally asked, breaking the silence. Her voice was shaky, but her need for answers outweighed her fear. What do they want with the treasure? The woman's eyes flicked to her for a brief moment before returning to the road. They're part of a much bigger operation. They're after the book, after the knowledge it contains, and they'll stop at nothing to get it. Sophia frowned. Why haven't they caught us yet? Why didn't they just take the book when they had the chance? The woman sighed, her expression hardening. They're smart. They know we're connected to it, but they also know that if they push too hard, they risk losing everything. They're waiting for the right moment to strike, and when they do, we'll be in the fight of our lives. As they drove deeper into the city, the woman's tense posture made it clear that they weren't just heading to safety. She was calculating their next move, her mind working through options. The puppy sat quietly between them, its body still alert, as if it could sense the growing tension. Sophia glanced out of the window, her thoughts racing. So what's next? Do we just keep running from these people? The woman's eyes narrowed. No, we don't just run. We take the fight to them, but first we need to gather more information. We need to know who they are and why they want the book so badly. Suddenly, the woman slammed on the brakes, pulling the car into a side street. Sophia nearly jolted forward, but the woman's hand on her arm stopped her. Wait here, she ordered. I'll check the area. Sophia watched as the woman quickly stepped out of the car, her movements swift and confident. The puppy remained still, its eyes darting from Sophia to the woman as if aware of the need for caution. The woman returned after a few minutes, her face set in grim determination. They've been watching us. I've seen one of their vehicles parked a few blocks back. They're closing in. Sophia felt her stomach churn. What do we do now? We go to the safe house, the woman said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. There's a contact there who can help us, someone who knows more about these people and what they want with the treasure. The woman drove them through winding streets, eventually stopping in front of an old, run-down building. From the outside, it looked abandoned, but Sophia could feel the weight of secrecy surrounding it. The woman knocked on the door 3 times, pausing before she spoke. It's me. Let us in. There was a long silence before the door creaked open. A man stood in the doorway, his eyes scanning the area before locking onto the woman. He nodded, stepping aside to let them in. Sophia followed, her eyes adjusting to the dimly lit interior. The safe house was a simple place, furnished with old chairs and a table cluttered with papers and maps. The man who had let them in didn't say anything at first. He just looked at Sophia, his expression unreadable. The woman introduced them. This is Sophia. She's the one we've been trying to protect. She's got the book. The man nodded, his eyes flicking to the puppy, which was still close to Sophia. I've been expecting you. Once they were seated, the woman and the man began to talk in low voices, discussing their next move. Sophia tried to follow, but she felt lost in all the information. She was still reeling from everything she had uncovered about her family and the treasure. She hadn't expected to be thrown into a world of danger and secrecy, let alone have her life so abruptly thrown off course. After a moment, the man turned to her. You have the book, but you don't know the full extent of what's inside it, do you? Sophia shook her head. I only know part of it. It talks about my family's legacy, but there's so much more I don't understand. The man leaned forward, his voice steady and serious. That book contains not only the history of your family, but also the locations of hidden artifacts. The power that's been passed down through generations isn't just about wealth. It's about control. These people you're running from, they want that power, and they'll do anything to get it. Sophia's head spun. Control? What do you mean? The man paused, choosing his words carefully. The treasure your family protected isn't just material. It's knowledge that can change the course of history. Whoever controls it controls the future. Sophia's heart pounded. So they want to use the treasure to change the world. The man's eyes darkened. Exactly. And they'll stop at nothing to get it. Your family's role in protecting it has kept them at bay for years. But now that you've found it, they won't stop until they have it. Sophia felt a knot form in her stomach. The responsibility of carrying this treasure, this knowledge, was too much to bear. She had no idea how to protect it, and now it seemed like her family's past was catching up to her. The woman stood up, walking toward the window and glancing outside. We need to move quickly. We can't stay here long. They know we're here. Sophia stood up, the weight of the book heavy in her hands. The puppy, sensing the urgency, barked once, its eyes alert and watchful. We'll go to the next location, the woman said, her voice hard. It's the only way to stay ahead of them. Sophia nodded, clutching the book tightly. She was in this now, and there was no turning back. She had to find a way to protect the knowledge that had been passed down through generations, and stop the people who would use it for their own gain. The night had deepened, and Sophia felt the weight of the situation more than ever. The puppy, ever watchful, sat by her side, its sharp eyes trained on the door. The man at the safe house, who hadn't yet revealed his name, had told them everything they needed to know. "Who exactly are we dealing with?" Sophia asked, trying to make sense of everything. "These people, they seem to be everywhere, and they want the book." "Why?" The woman, pacing back and forth in the dimly lit room, sighed and rubbed her temples. "The organization is called the Order. They've been around for centuries, hunting for knowledge, power, and control. Your family's treasure has been at the center of their obsession for years, and now they've found you." Sophia's stomach tightened. "And you've been fighting them for how long?" The woman looked at her, her expression hard. "As long as I can remember. I used to work for them, but I turned my back when I realized what they were really after. Now I protect the legacy, yours and mine." Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. "You worked for them?" The woman nodded. "I was one of them, but they've crossed a line. I won't let them take what belongs to you, to your family. Not after everything I've seen." The safe house was becoming less and less safe with every passing moment. Sophia knew they couldn't stay there for much longer, not with the Order closing in. She glanced over at the puppy, which was now sitting alertly by the door. It seemed to sense the urgency too. "So what now?" Sophia asked, looking back at the woman. "How do we stop them?" The woman straightened, her eyes steely with resolve. "We need to get to the next location. It's where the final piece of the puzzle is hidden. It's where your family's true connection to the treasure lies." Sophia shook her head, trying to process everything. "The mansion, the church, this, it's all connected to the treasure, isn't it?" "Yes," the woman replied, her voice calm but firm. "Everything your family's hidden, it's all part of a larger plan. But we're running out of time. They're going to come after us soon, and we need to move fast." They quickly packed up their things and prepared to leave the safe house. The puppy, sensing the change in atmosphere, began barking softly, as if it knew they were about to face more danger. The woman gave Sophia a final glance before leading the way out into the night. They moved quickly, keeping to the shadows as they made their way to the car. But as they reached the street, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. "Stay close," the woman murmured, her voice tense. "We're not safe yet." Just as they were about to get into the car, a black van appeared down the street, its headlights cutting through the dark. Sophia's heart skipped a beat. The van stopped directly in front of them, blocking their way. She could see figures inside, their faces obscured by dark windows. "We got company," the woman said, pulling Sophia back into the shadows. "They're here." Sophia's pulse quickened. She looked down at the puppy, who was standing still, watching the van with an alert gaze. There was no time to waste. They had to act fast. "We need to go around them," the woman said, pulling Sophia by the arm and leading her down a narrow alley. The puppy followed, its movements quick and precise. They ran through the alley, trying to keep their distance from the van, but as they neared the end of the alley, a figure stepped out from behind a dumpster, blocking their path. The man was tall, wearing a black coat and a mask that obscured his face. He was holding a gun. "Going somewhere?" he asked, his voice cold and calculated. Sophia froze, her heart pounding. She felt trapped again, cornered by the enemy. Without warning, the puppy lunged forward, its teeth bared as it jumped toward the man. The man raised the gun, but the puppy was too fast. It knocked his arm aside, causing him to miss his shot. In the chaos, Sophia seized the moment. "Run," the woman shouted, pulling Sophia in the opposite direction. The two of them sprinted down the alley, with the puppy hot on their heels. The man behind them shouted, but they didn't stop. They couldn't afford to. Sophia's legs burned as they ran through the night, the sounds of footsteps echoing behind them. They reached the end of the alley and ran into another street, but the danger wasn't over. They had to keep moving. After what felt like an eternity of running, they finally reached a quieter part of the city. The woman led them to a hidden door behind an old building, a door that opened into a small, unmarked room. The puppy immediately sat by the door, its eyes scanning the area as if waiting for the next move. Sophia gasped for breath, her heart still racing from the chase. She leaned against the wall, trying to steady herself. "We lost them," the woman said, her voice barely a whisper. "For now." Sophia nodded, but she knew they couldn't afford to stay in one place for too long. They had to keep moving. The Order was closing in, and they couldn't stop until the final piece of the puzzle was found. Sophia sat down on a nearby crate, staring at the puppy. The dog's eyes were still watchful, its body alert as it stayed close to her. It had protected her. It had led her this far, and now it was ready for the next step. "We need to know more about them," Sophia said, her voice firm. "We need to find out who's leading the Order and what they really want with the treasure." The woman nodded, her face set in determination. "The man who's been following us. He's the one we need to watch out for. He's their leader. Then we find him," Sophia said. "We take the fight to them." The woman smiled, a small, approving smile. We're on the same page now. Let's finish this." As they prepared to move again, the puppy barked once, a sharp, warning sound. Sophia looked at the woman, and for the first time, she felt ready. They weren't just running anymore, they were taking the fight to the enemy. And this time, they wouldn't stop until the truth was exposed. Sophia felt a heavy weight in her chest as she looked out over the dimly lit city from the hidden room they had taken refuge in. They had narrowly escaped their pursuers again, but she knew it was only a matter of time before the order found them. The knowledge from the book, the power it contained, everything was too dangerous, and now she had to make the ultimate decision. She glanced at the puppy, who was sitting quietly beside her, its eyes sharp, its posture alert. The little dog had been her constant companion, a silent guide through the chaos. It was clear to Sophia that she wasn't alone in this anymore. The puppy had chosen her, had led her here, and it wasn't about to stop. The woman, who had been a shadow in Sophia's life for what felt like an eternity, paced around the room. She had been in the game for far longer, yet she seemed just as unsettled as Sophia, perhaps even more. The weight of the treasure, and everything it meant, was too much for any one person to bear. And the deeper Sophia delved into her family's history, the more dangerous it became. "Where do we go from here?" Sophia asked, turning to the woman. She had to know. They were running out of time. The woman paused, her eyes narrowing as she thought. "We have to confront them. We can't keep running. If we do, the treasure will be used to bring even more chaos into the world, and we'll never know what secrets are hidden in that book." Sophia nodded slowly. She didn't have much choice. They had to stop the order from getting the treasure. Whatever it was, she had a responsibility now. The cost of stopping them was high, and the danger that lay ahead was even greater. The woman moved to the table in the corner, where maps, old documents, and photographs were scattered. She began sifting through them with a sense of urgency. Sophia stepped forward, glancing at the papers. Some were familiar to her now, symbols and markings she had seen in the mansion and the church. But the most unsettling thing was the map, the location marked in red, the final place, the place where it all ended. "This is it," the woman said, pointing to the map. "The final clue, the last piece of the puzzle. This is where the treasure will be completed, and we can't let anyone else get there first." Sophia studied the map, her fingers brushing over the familiar symbols. The last location on the map pointed to an old, crumbling building outside the city, a place she had never heard of. "Who else knows about this place?" Sophia asked, her voice steady despite the fear she felt. The woman shook her head. "Only a few people, but they're dangerous. They won't stop until they have what they want." The puppy barked, its eyes focused intently on the map. It was ready. Sophia could feel the pull of the unknown, the need to get to the truth. "Then let's go," Sophia said, her voice filled with resolve. "We'll face them, whatever it takes." As they made their way to the hidden location, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking straight into a trap. They had been through so much already, barely escaping the mansion, the church, the safe house, and yet, here they were, still moving forward. The city streets grew darker and quieter as they approached their destination. The puppy trotted ahead, its sharp senses guiding them through the shadows. Sophia kept her pace steady, her eyes scanning the surroundings. "This doesn't feel right," the woman said under her breath. "We should have already been in and out, but we've been followed. We need to hurry." Suddenly, from the shadows, a familiar voice called out, "Not so fast." Sophia froze, her blood running cold. The voice was too familiar. It was the man from the mansion, the one who had been following them, the one who seemed to know more than he was letting on. "Don't make me stop you," the man said, stepping into the light. His mask was off now, revealing his stern, emotionless face. His eyes locked onto Sophia. "You've been following us," Sophia said, her voice hard. "Why?" The man didn't answer immediately. He simply stood there, his gaze piercing. "You don't understand what you're doing. That book, the treasure, it's not meant for people like you. You don't know the danger you're in." Sophia took a step forward, the puppy by her side. "And who are you to decide that? You don't get to control this." The man's eyes narrowed. "I'm here because the Order made a mistake. They think they can control this power, but they don't understand what it really means. The treasure, it's more than just power. It's a weapon." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. "A weapon? What are you talking about?" The man sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You don't get it, do you? That book, it's not just a collection of stories. It's a map to the ultimate power. And the Order, they're too blinded by greed to see it." Sophia's confusion deepened. "So you're not with them?" "No," the man said firmly. "I was once part of the Order, but I realized too late what they were really after. I left them because I couldn't be a part of their plan. I've been tracking you because I know they'll come for you. And when they do, they'll destroy everything in their path." Sophia took a step back, her mind reeling. "So you're saying you want to help us?" The man's gaze softened. "I don't want to help anyone. I just want to make sure the book doesn't fall into the wrong hands. If we don't stop them, they'll use it to take control of everything." Sophia stood in the cold night, her heart racing. The man, an unlikely ally, was offering them a chance to stop the order, but at what cost? She had already risked so much. Now the decision was even harder. Trust this man or continue on alone? The puppy barked, as if pushing her to make a decision. Sophia glanced at the woman, who was watching her carefully. "This could be our only chance," the woman said quietly. "But it's up to you." Sophia took a deep breath. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everything her family had hidden for centuries, for the future, and for the world that could change forever with the wrong hands holding the treasure. She turned to the man. "All right, we work together, but if you betray us, I won't hesitate to stop you." The man nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "Deal." With that, the three of them, Sophia, the woman, and the puppy, set out toward the final location, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The truth was close now, and so was the danger. But Sophia knew one thing for certain. She was no longer running. She was going to take control of her own fate. Sophia's footsteps echoed in the cold night air as she, the woman, and the man walked toward the final location, the place that would determine the fate of the treasure and everything they had fought for. The puppy, as always, led the way, its small frame moving quickly and with purpose. Sophia's heart raced with anticipation and fear. She wasn't just walking into the unknown. She was walking into a battle that could change everything. The building they approached was large but old. It seemed abandoned at first glance, but there was something about it, the way it loomed against the dark sky, that felt like it had been waiting for them. "We're here," the man said, his voice low. He had been leading them through the maze of streets, making sure they weren't being followed. His warning about the order was still fresh in Sophia's mind. "Let's go inside," Sophia said, her voice steady. She knew that no matter how much she dreaded what was to come, they had no choice but to face it head-on. The puppy barked, as if to reassure her, and led them toward the entrance. The door creaked open, and they stepped inside. The air was musty, the smell of old stone and dust filling their lungs. The building was a vast, empty space, its walls lined with old shelves, crates, and boxes. There was a strange hum in the air, almost like an energy pulsing beneath their feet. "The treasure is somewhere in here," the woman said, her eyes scanning the room. "We need to find it before the order does." Sophia felt the weight of the moment, knowing that this was their final chance. If they didn't succeed now, everything they had done would be for nothing. The order was closing in, and the book they had been protecting could change the world if they didn't stop it. The puppy barked once more, its ears perked up. It seemed to be sensing something, its body tense and alert. "Are you sure this is the place?" Sophia asked, her voice rising with anxiety. The man turned to her, his face hard. "It's the only place left. The treasure is hidden here. We just need to find it." As they moved deeper into the building, Sophia's sense of unease grew. Every step they took seemed to draw them closer to something she couldn't quite place, something dangerous. Suddenly, there was a loud bang, and the door behind them slammed shut with a deafening noise. Sophia spun around, her heart pounding in her chest. A group of masked figures stepped out from the shadows, surrounding them. They were the Order, the very people they had been trying to avoid. Sophia's stomach twisted. She knew this was coming, but the reality of it felt overwhelming. The man who had been helping them stood firm, but the woman beside her seemed tense, ready to spring into action. One of the masked figures stepped forward. His voice was cold and filled with authority. "You're too late," he said, his eyes narrowing at Sophia. "The treasure is ours now. You've made a fatal mistake." Without warning, the puppy lunged toward the figures, barking loudly. It moved with lightning speed, knocking one of the men off his feet. Sophia's heart raced as the chaos erupted around them. "Move," the woman shouted, grabbing Sophia's arm and pulling her toward a nearby hallway. The man quickly followed, his eyes darting back to the Order members. The puppy was doing its best to keep the attackers at bay, darting around and distracting them, but Sophia knew they couldn't keep this up for long. They ran down the narrow corridor, the sounds of their pursuers close behind. The woman turned to them as they reached a locked door. "We're almost there," she said. "The treasure is behind this door." Without wasting a second, the man kicked the door open, revealing a small, dimly lit room. At the center of the room was a pedestal, and atop it, a small, intricately carved box. Sophia's eyes widened as she realized this was it, the treasure they had been searching for. The woman stepped forward, moving toward the pedestal. But just as her hand reached out to touch the box, a loud voice stopped her. "You think you can take it?" the leader of the Order said, stepping into the room. "It's already ours." Sophia's blood ran cold as the leader advanced toward them, flanked by two of his men. There was no way out. They were cornered. But the puppy wasn't giving up. It barked loudly, its body tense, ready to defend them at all costs. Sophia could feel its loyalty, its determination to protect them. "We don't want to fight," Sophia said, her voice filled with conviction. "We just want to stop you from using this for your own gain." The leader sneered. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. The knowledge in that box is far more powerful than you can imagine, and we will use it to reshape the world." Sophia knew she had no choice. The book, the treasure, it had to be destroyed. In a split second, Sophia made her decision. She lunged for the box, her fingers brushing against the cool surface. She couldn't let them have it. She wouldn't. The leader shouted, and his men advanced, but the puppy sprang into action again, charging toward them with a fierce bark. It knocked one of the men off balance, giving Sophia the chance she needed. She grabbed the box, holding it tightly. The woman quickly grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the exit. "We have to go now." But before they could make their escape, the leader reached out and grabbed Sophia by the arm. "You think you can stop us?" He spat, his grip tightening. But the puppy, with its teeth bared, lunged at the leader, sinking its teeth into his arm. The man shouted in pain, letting go of Sophia, allowing them to break free. They ran, the puppy leading them through the maze of corridors. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder, but Sophia didn't look back. The treasure, the knowledge was now in her hands, and she knew what she had to do. The world couldn't afford to have this power fall into the wrong hands. They burst through a side door and into the open air, the night sky stretching above them. Sophia felt the cool breeze on her face, but it didn't calm her. The battle was far from over. "We need to destroy it," the woman said, breathless. "We can't let anyone use it." Sophia nodded. The treasure couldn't be allowed to remain in the world. The knowledge had to be destroyed, no matter what the cost. With the puppy by her side, she knew she was ready to make the ultimate sacrifice. Sophia's hands shook as she gripped the box. She could feel its weight, both physical and emotional. The knowledge inside it could reshape everything. But that was exactly why it had to be destroyed. There was no other option. The puppy, still alert, paced in front of her, as if ready to protect her from any danger. The woman beside her looked equally determined, her face set in a firm expression. They had come this far, and now they were at the final crossroads. Sophia's mind raced as she looked at the open city streets around them. The night was calm, eerily so, but she knew the order wasn't far behind. The leader and his men wouldn't give up easily. They'd fight to the very end for what was in the box. "We need to go," the woman said, her voice low. "The more time we waste, the closer they get. We have to get rid of it." Sophia nodded. She had already made up her mind. There was no going back now. The weight of the book, of the knowledge, was something she couldn't bear to carry anymore. The woman led them through the dark streets, her steps quick and precise. Sophia followed, her mind preoccupied with the enormity of her decision. They had to find a way to destroy the book, once and for all. After a few minutes of walking, they arrived at a secluded spot near the edge of the city, an abandoned warehouse that seemed to be forgotten by time. The woman glanced around, ensuring they were not being followed, before pushing open the rusted door. "This is it," the woman said, looking at Sophia. "We're safe for now, but we have to act fast. The longer we wait, the more danger we're in." Inside the warehouse, the air was musty, filled with the scent of rotting wood and damp concrete. It was the perfect place to dispose of the treasure without attracting attention. But Sophia knew that the act of destroying the book would be more than just physical. It would be a choice to leave the past behind, to sever the connection to the legacy that had shaped her family for centuries. The woman moved quickly, gathering tools and supplies from a nearby table. "We need to burn it. Fire will erase the knowledge forever." Sophia held the box tightly to her chest, unwilling to let go. The puppy sat by her feet, watching her intently, as if sensing the gravity of the situation. For a moment, Sophia hesitated. Was this the right decision? Could she truly destroy everything that had been hidden for so long? But then she thought of the Order, their pursuit, their desire to use the power of the treasure for their own purposes. And the puppy, who had guided her through this journey, barked once, as though encouraging her to do what was necessary. With a deep breath, Sophia placed the box on the workbench in front of her. The woman lit a match, and the flame flickered in the dark space. She looked at Sophia one last time. "Are you ready?" the woman asked. Sophia nodded, her heart heavy. "Yes, it has to be done." The woman dropped the match onto the book, and the fire took hold instantly. The flame spread quickly, consuming the pages and lighting up the room with an eerie glow. Sophia felt a strange sense of relief as she watched the book burn, its knowledge disappearing into the smoke. But as the book turned to ash, the air grew thick with an unsettling tension. The puppy growled softly, its fur bristling, as if it sensed something was not quite right. Before Sophia could fully process what had just happened, The sound of footsteps echoed through the warehouse. Her heart raced. She looked up, only to see the leader of the order standing in the doorway, his masked face cold and menacing. "You thought you could destroy it?" he sneered, his voice laced with contempt. "You're too late. The treasure isn't just in the book. It was never just in the book." Sophia's blood ran cold as she realized what he was implying. The treasure wasn't just knowledge. It was power that could not be contained in a single artifact. The man stepped forward, his eyes locking onto Sophia. "You don't understand. It was always meant to be passed on. You can't erase the legacy. You can't destroy it." Before Sophia could react, the puppy barked loudly, its body tense and ready to spring into action. But instead of charging toward the leader, it turned to the side, growling at a figure emerging from the shadows. Sophia turned quickly, her breath catching in her throat. It was the man who had been helping them, the one who had once claimed to be their ally. But now his face was filled with an expression of anger, and his hands were outstretched, holding something glinting in the dim light. "What's going on?" Sophia demanded, her voice rising. The man's eyes hardened. "I never wanted to stop the order. I wanted to control it. I wanted the power for myself." The woman stepped in front of Sophia, ready to protect her from the betrayal. "You sold us out," she spat, her voice full of fury. "You were never on our side." The man's smirk deepened. "It was never about sides. It was always about power, and now you've burned the book, but the truth is, it's in your blood. You'll never escape it." Sophia took a step back, her mind spinning. She had trusted him, trusted the man who had guided them. And now, everything was unraveling. The treasure had never just been a thing. It was something inside of her, something she couldn't escape. The puppy growled once more, and with a swift movement it lunged at the man, biting down on his arm with a vicious snarl. The man screamed in pain, stumbling back. The woman wasted no time. She lunged forward, knocking the man to the ground, her movements swift and practiced. "You'll never control this," she said, her voice low and fierce. Sophia stood frozen for a moment, the enormity of the situation hitting her all at once. She had been part of something much larger than she ever realized, a legacy, a power, and a responsibility. But now it was up to her to decide what came next. With the man subdued, Sophia looked at the woman. The tension in the room had escalated to a boiling point, but Sophia knew she couldn't stand by and let this chaos continue. "I don't want any part of this power anymore," Sophia said, her voice shaking but firm. "I don't want this legacy." The woman nodded, understanding what Sophia meant. "We end it here. We walk away from it." Sophia turned back to the puppy, which was still watching them. It had led her through the dark, and now it was showing her the way forward, away from the power, away from the legacy. With one last look at the man who had betrayed them, Sophia stepped toward the door, the woman by her side, and the puppy leading the way. The treasure, the knowledge, and the legacy, everything that had brought her here, was gone. But now Sophia was free. Sophia's footsteps echoed as she walked away from the warehouse, the cool night air brushing against her skin. The city felt eerily quiet, like it was holding its breath, waiting for something. Or perhaps, Sophia thought, it was simply the calm after the storm. The fire had burned, the treasure had been destroyed, and she was free. But freedom didn't feel as she had imagined. It didn't feel like a victorious triumph. Instead, it felt like an overwhelming emptiness, a hollow space where everything she had thought she knew about herself had been shattered. The puppy walked by her side, its body close to hers, offering a silent comfort. She looked down at it, the small dog who had been the one constant in the chaos. It had been the guide, the protector, the one that led her out of the darkness time and time again. But now it was over. The book, the legacy, the danger. Everything was gone. "Is this really over?" Sophia asked quietly, more to herself than anyone else. The woman, still beside her, gave a deep sigh, her expression filled with both exhaustion and resolve. "For now, but the truth is, we've only just begun to understand what we've been part of. There's still so much we don't know." Sophia looked up, meeting the woman's gaze. "So we destroyed the treasure, but you're saying it's not over? There's more?" The woman nodded. "Yes, there are still people out there who want what we've just hidden. And the truth about your family's legacy will never be fully erased, not entirely. There's more to uncover." Sophia's heart sank. "I thought it would end with the treasure. I thought that if we destroyed it, it would be over." The woman shook her head. "We've only removed the surface. The true power is in what's been buried, what's still out there." As they continued to walk through the city, Sophia's mind kept spinning. The world she had known had been turned upside down. Everything she thought she understood about her family, her history, had been a lie, a carefully constructed facade designed to protect the legacy of the treasure. She had made the right decision, hadn't she? Destroying the book, keeping it from falling into the wrong hands, was the only way to prevent the chaos that could ensue. But at what cost? The puppy paused, sniffing the ground before walking to the side. Sophia followed, her footsteps slow and deliberate. She reached down, rubbing the puppy's ears as it turned to look at her with those wise, amber eyes. "I guess we have to figure out what happens next," Sophia said, her voice soft. The woman, still walking a few steps ahead, turned to face her. "That's up to you now." Sophia's brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" "You've been carrying the weight of this legacy, but now it's yours to decide what happens next. The book is gone, the treasure's hidden, but your family's history, your future, it's still in your hands." Sophia stopped walking, looking up at the woman. "I don't want to be tied to this anymore. I don't want the legacy." "I know," the woman said, her voice understanding, "but sometimes the past doesn't let go that easily, and sometimes it's up to the next generation to rewrite the story." Sophia stood there, feeling the weight of the woman's words settle into her bones. She didn't want to be part of the past anymore. She didn't want the treasure, the power, the knowledge. She just wanted to move on, to live a life that was her own. But she knew it wasn't going to be that simple. The world was bigger than her, and no matter how much she wanted to escape the shadows of her family's legacy, they would always follow her. The puppy tugged at her sleeve, pulling her back to reality. She smiled faintly, giving the dog a gentle pat on the head. It had done more for her than anyone else in this crazy journey. It had been her guide, her protector, her friend. "I guess we'll take it one step at a time," Sophia said, her voice quiet but determined. The woman nodded. "That's all we can do. But no matter what comes next, remember this. You are not your family's past. You're your own person. And that's the greatest power you can have." They stopped at a quiet cafe in the city, the lights glowing softly through the windows. It was peaceful here, the sounds of the world moving on around them. Sophia sat at a table by the window, the puppy curled up at her feet. She felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. The past wasn't gone, not entirely, but she was ready to face the future. No more running, no more hiding. She had made the decision to let go, and now it was time to live the life she chose. The woman sat across from her, her expression softer than before. "What will you do now?" Sophia smiled faintly, looking down at the puppy. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." As they sat in the quiet cafe, the world outside seemed distant. For the first time in a long while, Sophia felt like she could breathe. The treasure of the legacy and the dangers were behind her, and now it was time to start anew. She didn't know what the future held, but she was ready for it. With the puppy by her side and a new sense of purpose, Sophia knew she could face anything that came her way. The journey wasn't over, but it was hers to control now, and that was enough. The morning light filtered through the cafe window, casting a warm glow across the room. Sophia sipped her coffee, the taste comforting but bittersweet. The past few days had been a whirlwind, filled with betrayals, revelations, and choices that changed the course of her life. But now, for the first time in a long while, she could breathe freely. The puppy, who had been her constant companion through it all, curled up at her feet. Its steady presence was a reminder of how far she had come, how much she had grown, and how much she still had to learn. The woman sitting across from her had become more of a mentor than a mere ally, guiding her through the twists and turns of the treasure hunt, and now through the aftermath. Sophia leaned back in her chair, taking a moment to let everything settle in her mind. The road to this moment had been fraught with danger and uncertainty, but it was also filled with moments of clarity. She wasn't just running anymore, she had made her choice. The treasure, the knowledge, it was all gone, but her future was hers to decide. The woman, still silent, watched her with an inscrutable expression. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Sophia smiled faintly, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "Just thinking about how much has changed, how much I'd changed." The woman nodded, her eyes softening. "It's never easy, letting go of something that's been such a big part of you. But you've done it. You've chosen your path." Sophia's smile widened slightly, but there was still a tinge of sadness in her eyes. "I have, and it's a strange feeling, knowing that the past is no longer tied to me. I thought I was meant to carry it, you know? The legacy, the responsibility. But now I see that it was just a weight I didn't need to bear anymore. Sometimes it takes a while to realize that letting go isn't the same as losing," the woman said quietly, her gaze thoughtful. "You've made room for something new, a new life, and that's powerful." Sophia nodded, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. The shadows that had once loomed over her family's history no longer held their grip. The treasure was gone, hidden from the world, and the knowledge, dangerous and powerful, had been erased. What remained was a blank slate, a chance to build something of her own. The puppy, sensing her calm, lifted its head and barked softly, as if agreeing with the woman's words. Sophia laughed lightly, the sound a welcome relief from the weight of the past. The puppy had been with her every step of the way, and now it felt like they were ready to face whatever the future held together. "What now?" Sophia asked, glancing up at the woman. "What's next for us?" The woman leaned back in her chair, folding her arms across her chest. "What's next for you, Sophia, is entirely up to you." Sophia took a deep breath, letting the words settle in. It was true. She had control over her future now. No more secrets, no more dark family legacies. She could build a life that was entirely her own. It was a strange but liberating feeling. "I think I want to help others," Sophia said after a moment. "All this talk about power, about control, about the past, it's made me realize that I don't want to be part of that world anymore. I want to make a difference. I want to use what I've learned to help people who don't have the same opportunities I did." The woman's eyes softened with approval. "That's a noble path, and I think you're more than capable of walking it." Sophia smiled, the first genuine smile she had given in days. The future was unknown, but for the first time, it didn't scare her. She was ready. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything finally lifting. Outside the cafe window, the world moved on, unaware of the history that had just been rewritten. For Sophia, though, this was the moment of her own rebirth. She wasn't defined by the treasure, the legacy, or the past. She was defined by the choices she made from here on out. The woman broke the silence again. "You don't have to go on this journey alone, you know." Sophia turned to look at her. "I know. I think I've realized that I don't have to carry all of it on my own anymore. I have people I trust now, people who care about me." The puppy barked once more, drawing Sophia's attention. She reached down to pet it, feeling the warmth of its small body. The bond they had formed was unbreakable. The dog had been her protector, her guide, and now was her partner in this new chapter of her life. "Good," the woman said with a smile. "You've learned what you need to. Now it's time to live, to make a new legacy of your own, a legacy built on choice, not obligation." Sophia nodded, feeling the weight of those words. A new legacy, one that didn't involve treasure or ancient knowledge, but one that could create a future filled with meaning and purpose. As they left the cafe, Sophia took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past lift from her shoulders. The puppy trotted beside her, its tail wagging as if it knew they were moving forward, together. They walked into the streets, the morning sunlight brightening the day. Sophia didn't know exactly what her future would hold, but she knew it would be a future she chose, and that was enough for now.